What's up, boys, and welcome back to the Bettor Sports Show. I'm Ryan of Croton. I have a very special guest with me tonight. Randy, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're here to talk about.
First of all, just thank you for inviting me on and having me as a guest. Real excited to go over the card. Uh, Background: I've been training MMA for about 6, 7 years. I train out of Tiger Schulman's in New Jersey, the headquarters in Elmwood Park. Uh, published writer formerly for Fanside and Fox Sports for a bit. Wrote for them for about a year. Covered the NBA draft, Knicks, a couple other teams, and just a general sports fanatic and a fan of sports betting.
There we go. So he's in the right place. We know you've come to the right place. We're all about that here, making money, making bets, and hopefully making some correct decisions. So with that in mind, let's jump right into this Saturday's card. It's an excellent stacked card. And to begin, I'm going to give you my general caveat I always talk about when betting on UFC. I remember back in college, if I had a bad week or if I had a bad day, when the UFC rolled around, it was a huge escape for me, right? I love MMA, martial arts. I train Muay Thai myself. I'm going for another stripe on my belt on Thursday. That should be
Congrats.
interesting.
Very nice.
Thank you. And the mistake I would fall into is, not gonna lie, I'd be fucking around on the offshore sports book. I had the Bovada fired up, and if I won one of the first two fights, I'd be like, hell yeah, this is it? This is my night. I'm gonna bet the next fight. And
Yeah,
if I
roll it
lost
up.
that fight, I can't be
Yeah.
like, well, I can't stop on a loss, right? It's my night. I can't stop. And inevitably, I'd sit there ping ponging back and forth, betting all the fights, just wild, wild markets. And at the end of the night, I would either be down, up slightly, or essentially right back where I started. Whereas if I had made smarter, lower volume bets and stuck to my reads, I would be up a
Mm-hmm.
ton. And then thankfully, I was able to put that degeneracy behind me. Not gonna lie, I still have the voice in the back of my head, but I've learned to control it, through good decision making. And also, as an aside, I always still talk about, keeping your cool during the fight, because if you have money on a guy and they're getting pieced up, they're getting taken down, it's looking very much like they're going to lose a decision, get finished. That can be a very stressful thing. It can cause you to make the bad decision, be like, dude, what the fuck? I always lose like this. Don't
Yeah.
tilt. I experienced that firsthand. The biggest MMA bet I ever placed was Leon Edwards in the second fight against Usman, right?
Oh man.
Oh, yeah. It was on, fun fact, it was on my birthday, right? Because the card went past midnight. It spilled into my birthday, and I was watching it with all my friends. I was like, "Yep, boys, this is it. I'm calling the underdog. Gonna make a lot of money on my birthday." First round, he takes down Usman. Goes very well. And if you watch that fight, after that, he essentially got, I don't want to
Yeah.
say completely dominated, but he got controlled, taken down. Usman was cruising his way to a victory. And then I was a beneficiary of the head kick heard around the world, right? Boom, headshot dead.
Man.
And I was on cloud nine. So I experienced all the highs and lows I talk about in that one night. And that's why I tell you, if you do experience those high and lows, one, it's natural, it's human, we've all been there. But two, take some time to center yourself and make a good decision. And without further ado, Randy, what's the first fight you're looking at?
So, me personally, I'm a fan of watching the prelims a little bit more rather than the main card. It's just, and that's just a me thing personally. I appreciate the lesser known fighters on their way up and seeing which ones can break through, even just into the rankings. It's interesting to watch, especially how the sport's developed over the past decade. Or seeing really just all over the world. There's pretty good culture just about everywhere you go. So what my first matchup, uh, please forgive me if I butcher any of these names. I'm terrible with the names. On the prelims, we have it is the one, two, three, the fourth fight on the card. Ibo Aslan and Anton Turkalaj, which I actually did not know they had previously fought uh, up until we discussed this the other day, which I went back and watched that. And so the couple of things that I noticed, um, Anton's game is pretty well rounded and developed. But if we look at Aslan from that fight and what he did up till now, when they're about to have their rematch, the competition he's faced is such a step down from Turkalaj. Turkalaj is probably the best opponent he's faced since. And then we look on the other side. Turkalaj has faced pretty, I would consider, a step up in competition, not fared too well. Just looking at that, without the nitty gritty that I found in the film study that I did, surprising that Turkalaj is the underdog here. And so I got to lean with my dog on that, especially since he came out with the victory on the first time. I could see him going 2-0 in this rematch, just based off the step up that he's faced in competition since. I can pull up some of the numbers for you here really
Yeah, let's
quick.
do it.
So Ebo fought Georgi Kubashvili. I hope I got that right. He was on a 7 straight losing streak before facing Ebo. And then Ebo also fought Almakar Alves. He was on a 5-loss streak. And the same story for Felix Palandis. So between his 3 recent opponents, they were on a minus 18 fight skid, if I have that correct. You could hardly make the argument that, again, like, how much is he developing? How much is he adding to his skill set from fighting guys, again, that low in record competition? That's my argument. Again, really, it's more or less of the argument why one guy shouldn't win rather than why one guy should. But that's where I'm at with that one. Early on the prelims, leaning underdog.
I think there's a huge opportunity here to live bet Turkali after round 1 because Ebo is a
I
knockout
agree.
artist,
I
and he's
agree.
going to come out and he's just going to swing. If you saw his fight on Dana White's Contender Series, that's his trademark. He likes to punish people with his power, pressure early, and get the knockout. However, we've seen countless times in the UFC, those guys, especially coming off the Contender Series, to Randy's point, they don't face a ton of adversity on the regional scene. They come up, they get the big knockout, they get the contract, and then you're
Mhm.
in deep water. You're making your debut, and you come out for the first round, and you go all out, and you gas out against a guy who I agree Turkali definitely has, I think, better grappling experience. If you saw his fight against Almeida, that was a tough matchup, right? That's a
Oh
hell of
yeah.
a matchup for anybody. And
So
he did get
even off Almeida, I'll say he was 6-1. He's 6-1. So again, he's another guy. Again, his stock is rising. That's not an easy fight. You know what I mean? And he lost rear naked choke in round 1 that fight.
mhm. But something I did notice is he was able to stay on his feet and fight that takedown for most of the first round, right? It was an awful start and he almost recovered. And while I do think that was a step up in competition for him, seeing a guy just kind of keep his head above water like that does stick out to me. So I think it could be a mirror of their first fight. Aslan comes out, he's throwing, he probably wins the first round, but he gasses. That's when the grappling comes into effect. Turkali's able to get him against the fence, get that underhook, right, take him down. And so that's my read on this particular fight.
Definitely, I agree.
Mhm. And continuing on, an underdog I like myself is Andre Petrosky in his fight against Jacob Malkoun. I like this fight for a variety of reasons. First off, right, there are many books that are going to offer you the spread on MMA betting, right? Plus 3.5 will likely be the spread on Petrosky. What that means, to simplify it, if he wins in any fashion, right, he wins a decision, he wins by finish, TKO, submission, even a DQ, the bet automatically wins. If he gets
Mhm.
finished, it loses. But and this is why I think it comes into a play in the matchup like this. If he loses a decision and it's 29-28 across the board based on the line, I think that could be a realistic outcome. You'll still win your bet if you can get that spread at plus 3.5. Andre comes out tough in the first round. I think it's very realistic he could come out and at least take a round here. And on the flip side, I don't see Malkoun as a finisher. He's had guys in there hurt, and he's opted to, instead of pushing for the finish, really trying to establish the ground and pound, take them down, choke them, submit them. He'll just get the single leg, hold that top position, and he will pepper in the strikes, to keep the position to stop the referee from, standing them up. But to me, I don't see fighting for a finish being in his game plan. And I believe in his last fight, he was actually on the wrong end of a very unusual decision, right? When he had the illegal strikes to the back of the head, or am I misremembering?
No, I believe you're correct. I remember that. I remember that as well.
I think that could also come into play here where he has that in the back of his mind, like, okay, last time I really had a guy where I thought I could finish them, I took them down. It ended up going against me. Let's stick to the game plan and what's gotten me my wins in the UFC. So I love Petrosky on the spread here, and I'm definitely going to sprinkle him as a dog. It's in his backyard. And speaking of dogs, he's a dog. I saw him fight live at UFC Boston. He has power. And not gonna lie, he did gas out at the end of that, but GM3 is a tough opponent, and at this price for this guy, I like this spot.
I like the read. I agree with that completely. I agree. Up and down.
Mhm.
Great. I think that's a great call.
Thank you, thank you. I'm full of a few of them. Some good, some bad. Some of my great calls don't turn out too well. I was on Volkanovski, thought that was a great call, but, you know.
I'll tell you what, there's as with all sports betting, nothing is the lock that we
Mhm,
want it to be. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to MMA, the hardest thing is, you know, they say it about football, it's a game of inches, but really, I mean, MMA is a game of fractions of seconds. You know, one slip up in footwork, just, one time you don't catch the jab, one time you don't change levels, one time you don't feint correctly. A guy could have a fight perfectly, and then lose it on a buzzer beater overhand in the final second, or like you said before with the Usman and Edwards fight. You could be down those 4 rounds, and then the kick heard round the world happens, and your bet goes straight down the drain. So if there is anything that is volatile, it's just MMA in general. But
mhm.
again, when you assessing that call that you just made on that fight, again, I feel like you're seeing it pretty clearly there.
Thank you, thank you. That's definitely gonna be one of my plays. I'll very likely give that out as a play. So continuing on, what's the next fight you have your eyes on?
Next one, I think it might be one of the fights of the night. The Nate Landwehr. Do I have that name correct? I
Yep,
butchered the
Nate
last
Landwehr,
one.
Nate the Train. Woo, woo.
Yeah. So couple of things with this fight against Jamal Emmers. So the biggest thing I'm concerned about here is Nate's development. So when he fought, who do we? Well, his Dan Ige fight, he got pieced up most
Mhm,
most of the time. And Dan, again, he's been up and down, but looked great there. His loss to Julian Erosa was as far back as I looked. Um, his boxing is it's just lacking. He's a little stiff. There's not much of a feint game there. He doesn't change levels, uh, but he does come forward. He is the train. That is his nickname for a reason. But it's at times it's with reckless abandon, um, and his game is just very risky. On the same side, Jamal Emmers, long guy. I like his style. His footwork concerns me a little bit, but what he has in his toolbox that Nate doesn't, again, is just a little bit more physicality in his boxing. He will catch the jab often. I like anybody that has jab defense. I sent you a short film study earlier when we were just talking back and forth.
mhm,
Film study on his fight. A couple times he's caught circling out with his lead foot first instead of his back foot. In simple terms, all that means is you're going nowhere over 2 steps. You need to take a third step if you're stepping with your lead foot first, and that's not something you want to see again from guys that are competing at the highest level. But with that being said, Emmers, I think, is slick enough to handle somebody like Nate. I don't believe he's added to his skill set enough over his fights for me to lean on his direction. Jamal Emmers, I'm not sure what the odds are on him right now. I believe he is the heavy favorite, if I'm correct. I'm going to pull that up real quick. But I am leaning Emmers in this fight. And if the prop becomes available, I would much rather lean on the fight to end by KO, TKO, or DQ, as long as it's minus 120 or better odds. If it's anything higher than minus 120, I would probably just lean on Emmers for that fight. That's my read on it.
mhm. Yep, Emmers is gonna be clocking in at a price of a little bit of over 2 to 1, like minus 220 range, while Nate's gonna bring you back plus 180. And to your point about the value, I think, that's an excellent point to make, right? There are certain plays you can make And yeah, they could be winners, they can be losers, but you have to identify from an odds standpoint, is there enough there, taking in the tax the sports books take with the juice and the vig, for you to put your hard-earned money down on that play? And on that point, I am someone who likes to read the betting market. I'll occasionally tail the betting market. I looked heavily at Rice McKee for this fight, and after doing some tape study, seeing Nojikani's last fight against old Jaychuk, I hope I got that right. That was those two hard ones.
I
Um,
hope.
originally I was gonna go with the McKee side, but I don't know how he's going to line up against that Muay Thai stance, the kicks, the knees. We saw him take a lot of damage in that fight against Anglusa. That's made me tentative. The money line has moved in his favor. Originally, I was tempted to take it, especially at the dog price, but now that it's moved, I have those concerns about the chin, especially in the first round. If Chidi comes out hot and heavy, looking for a finish, I'm gonna pass. And sometimes, boys, the best bets you make are the ones you don't make.
Yep. I agree. Also, if you look at, I think they're both coming off a loss streak as well, which is it's just
Mhm.
hard to make a read on both guys who have a lot to lose. Whoever loses this next one, it's a big downswing for both of them and a big comeback for one of them. Uh, yeah, that's also the reason for me personally. I feel like the best bet on that fight most likely is no bet.
Same. Also, a quick aside on your KO prop, TKO KO DQ for Nate versus Emmers. They've moved that fight to the prelim main event, and
Oh,
you
really?
see, yeah, see, he knows what's up, and the UFC likes to start the main card from the prelim main event on a high note. It's always like a hometown guy fighting, a big storyline, a rivalry matchup. So me putting that fight there, neither guy is local to the area, and I don't believe they like have some blood feud going. That means the UFC thinks it's going to be a good fight with a finish to get the crowd going, amped up for the main card. So that's another feather in your cap there.
If I could make one more note actually on that fight too, the only way that I could really see it going handedly Nate's way early is if he were to shoot. I feel like he can win this on the ground, dirty grappling. But there's not enough evidence there in the tape that I would put belief behind a game plan for him, at least making several attempts to wrestle early. And so, with that being said, I agree. I really feel like they're both going to be swinging for a finish, at least early. It's going to really come down maybe to the conditioning. We'll see what round two looks like. What you mentioned also for your first fight, I've never considered a live bet. That might be one that I would keep my eye on too for sure. See how round one plays out. If it makes it that far, I would consider it a live wager for sure.
There's always some value in the live markets because even the sports books, as good as they are, when things happen in real time, they don't have the same amount of time to devote resources, take in all the sharp action, move the lines ever so slightly, and when it's happening right there in that moment, they have to scramble too. Also, a quick aside on that, you know how they'll show you the DraftKings live odds during the UFC broadcasts?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, boys, don't get too baited by those. Those odds, when they appear on screen, can very much be behind or just straight up, wrong. Like, on occasion, they'll show, like, the wrong side for the wrong person. You'll, like, see, like, an underdog losing and they're minus 500, and you're like, "What's going on here?" Nothing, it's just a production error. So, don't see that and be like, "Well, fuck, I gotta chase
production
now." Yeah,
production
yeah,
error.
see, he knows what's up.
Yeah,
"Oh, sorry, too bad." It's like when they put the crazy parlays, right? One bettor in Wisconsin just dropped 50K on this free leg parlay of these 3 guys to win, and then one always loses. One
mhm.
always loses, so they know what they're doing
That was a
when they
great
show
point you
you it.
made the other day too. You never know who it is that's laying down that much money. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Whenever you hear something like that, it could be any Joe Schmo or it could be the smartest bettor in the world. You have no idea. You know.
Exactly, right? Those are anonymous tweets. That could be a betting syndicate. It could be some guy coming home from his day at work. He was like, "You know what, honey? Fuck it. I'm gonna go full send. Give me Johnny's college fund." Right? It's gone. Now, continuing on, another fight that I find intriguing that also has some line movement behind it, but this line movement I like is Buckley versus Luque. These are two guys who I'm a big fan of, right? I think this is going to be an excellent fight in the co-main event spot. I lean Buckley here. Here's why. Moving down a weight class to 170, I think has been a huge breath of fresh air to his career. He looks infinitely more comfortable in this fight. Now, Luke is no slouch. He has absolute dynamite in his hands, and we actually saw him wrestle a bit in his fight against RDA. However, I do think the grappling will favor Buckley here because he's just so big, so powerful, and that explosiveness as well that we've seen him display at the end of rounds to land the big shots, to stagger his opponent, to get the takedown. I think the new scoring system lends itself to that, right? We've seen the judges favor the damage over control time in many fights, and I think this could definitely be one where we see Luque comes out and he's controlling the first round, but then boom, Buckley has a
Mm-hmm.
big moment at the end. He's able to take him down, knock him down, and he's able to take the round in the mind of the judges. So I like the Buckley side a lot in this fight, and the betting market agrees with me. And just as a quick aside, you can disagree with the betting market, right? Just because somebody else thinks something doesn't mean you have to think it too. But when it supports one of your reads, that's a green light indicator for me.
I agree. The only thing with Buckley that concerns me at all is really just his cardio. If
Hmm.
outside that first round, he reminds me a lot of Kevin Lee. I don't know what that is exactly, but I feel like they have a lot of similarities in their game. Buckley could get that finish. He could get the finish really at any time. Again, just a little bit worried about if that goes past the first round. But I lean Buckley. I feel like, but that one actually as well. If not a performance of the night for one side or the other, very very high likely candidate for fight of the night. There, I think that's going to be a great one.
I think that's a good read, and it's always good to go back and forth and have some disagreement when you're having discussions like this, right? Because no one benefits from everybody just being there and jerking each other off, like, yeah, I love that, yeah,
Well,
great
that's how you
job.
know it's a sell. You can't agree on everything. Yeah. But again,
Exactly.
I still lean the same direction you do in that. I get a little bit nervous after round one with him.
Also, boys, I had a quick technical issue, so if my mic sounds slightly different, if my audio is slightly off, that's why I'm just doing a little bit of working here on my end to keep that going. So, apologize for that. Another quick note, just looking up and down the card here, something else I want to pull up is that the All-American Chris Weidman is on this card.
Yep.
Yeah, he knows exactly where I'm going with this.
Uh,
I really want to bet Chris Weidman because he's Chris Weidman. He's still my boy. I can't do it. Honest to God, I'm not saying he's going to lose because he's still Chris Weidman. But
Apparently, he's in tremendous shape
I mean, this is very likely. Well, I
for
thought
what
his
that's
last fight
worth.
would exactly for what that's worth, and I thought his last fight would be his previous fight. Excuse me. I want to make sure my semantics are clear. Would be his last fight in the UFC after he lost that heartbreaker to Tavares. But he came back from that. He's still pushing. And it's important not to get caught up in the narrative when you have your favorites fighting guys you love, right? There was a time a few fights ago I saw Weidman in a fight and I bet on him just because, like I said, he's Chris Weidman. So my advice, if you want to disagree and if you think you do have a strong read here, right, trust your gut, but understand he's unfortunately his body has some mileage on it. Perhaps reduce your stake on the underdog here if you like the Weidman side, or just going forward if you know you like a guy for emotional reasons, maybe outside of rational reasons. Nothing wrong with betting a little bit for fun, but just make sure you keep yourself in check.
I just feel like, if anything, that fight, same wager I mentioned with the fight previous. If you like the upset, or if you also don't like the chances of the upset, the fight to end by KO, TKO, DQ, I feel like, to me, that feels like you don't got to pick a side, just pick the result. Because you never know, something awesome could happen in there, and Wyman could walk out of there with a finish, and or you could cover yourself on the other side. A lot of these guys have not fared well returning from major injuries or long layoffs, uh, especially like our favorites, or like some of our
Yep.
favorite fighters over the past, like, I can't believe I'm saying this, like 8 to 15 years. I mean, like trying to bet against Tony Ferguson these days is, one of the more painful tasks in life. But it's like, I mean, you got to respect time, and guys don't typically get better as they get to the closer side of 40.
I believe there's a statistic champions 35 and above or something along those lines in UFC title fights have an absolutely atrocious record. I believe John Jones is the only anomaly, and that could be
And he
mistaken there.
is, and he
Yeah, he
is
is
an
pretty much,
anomaly.
yeah.
So right, yeah.
So, like you said, it's a young man's game. I know it's very tempting to fade the cocky, up and coming prospects, just generally speaking, right? Not for this particular fight, but generally speaking. But unfortunately, once your body takes that mileage, those weight cuts, the damage, especially if you've been knocked out, taking it on the chin, quite literally, it can add up. So that's just a quick note there. I'd love to be wrong about this. I don't think I will be, but I'd love to be. And then next, you were talking a little bit about the Dumas fight. What's your read there?
That is another one I'm pretty excited for. So this one is pretty much a classic vet against serious up and comer. Nursultan's got over 40 fights in his career. Dumas has 10. He's 4-5 in his last five. Ruzaboev, just an absolutely streaky fighter. Hold on, I got lost in my notes here. Terrible, terrible. Where was I? 1 second. So he is a Gracie guy. Ruzaboev. I love his grappling. I love his ability to finish. I just think that he is going to be a little bit overwhelming in this one. Just straight through the numbers, and I'm just going to lean that side on this. I think he overwhelms him. I don't know if he gets him out of there before round two, but I could see quite possibly a submission finish for Nursultan. If Dumas gets out of this one, maybe it's by a decision, and he could point fight his way out of there. I believe his last two fights, he won off decision, but he could strike from anywhere. He has a lot of weapons. He has several different types of finishes. So he's a plus 220 underdog I see here right now. So he might be worth a sprinkle to some people, but again, I just think he's going to be a little bit outmatched here, and just the experience overall with the resume that Nursultan Ruzaboev has. And he's the number 25 ranked middleweight worldwide. Dumas is currently the 61st ranked worldwide middleweight.
Yeah, I think in a fight like this, I think they're trying to showcase Rosabayev, really get him that knockout finish, right? Looking at some of his past fights, he generally wins a lot by finish in the first round. So perhaps to your point, if it gets out of that first round, maybe the lights become a little bright. Dumas can maybe fight to a decision victory, but I don't see it, especially not with the sizable. I believe he has a very sizable reach advantage here in this fight. He has all the physical gifts to be an absolute problem. I'm excited to see this fight. I think this could be a guy we're talking about again in the future.
I agree. And again, I mean, I just feel like if he decides to make this a dirty grappling match, I'm not sure if Dumas's skill set is there for that. But if the takedown defense is there and he could keep this on the feet, again, will he get the finish? I'm not sure. From what you stated, even just from the sheer size difference, I'm not sure if he'll get there. He may be able to smart point fight his way out of this. That's probably the only thing that actually stands out to me about his resume, with all of his finishes, and then most recently, definitely took a different approach to his fights and made sure he secured a victory. So, but again, I feel like the odds actually on this one are pretty fair. I feel like Ruzabayev, heavy favorite, seems reasonable here, just a little bit more on the arsenal.
Yep, and then looking up and down this card, I think a lot of these fights, to your point, where it's like there's a lean one side, but you're like, well, fuck, do I really want to bet that? I don't know if there's enough there, enough value on the line. Do I really truly believe that? Right? This is going to be an excellent card, but looking through a lot of these, it's difficult for me to say, right, I have a strong, educated stance on a particular side. That's why I'm in favor of the low volume approach. Algio versus Nelson. I think Algio wins that. But again, do I want to lay over minus 200 in an MMA fight? Probably not.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
that's the only thing because I mean, with how popular sports betting's gotten in general in the past year, really only going back that far in the past year, just the growth of sports betting is massive. And the market of MMA, I feel like, is still, it's too loose. Like a lot of these fights, in my opinion, are way closer than the odds will tell you. And so that's why it's weird territory for me when I see a really large favorite. It's almost hard to, because I mean, I'm a small unit better myself, so it's really hard for me to look at a couple underdogs plus 200 plus 300 and not sprinkle a half unit on each, because it's overinflated odds, in my opinion, with a lot of these fights. But with that being said, last week's card, I didn't give anything out, but I had 9 picks of my own, kept track of it, went 6 for 9. The only 3 losses were underdogs.
Nice.
But with that being said, 9 favorites. I don't know out of the entire card, but out of the 9 fights I picked, all the favorites won. The only losses on that were underdogs. So they really make it hard for you to get value out of favorites, for sure. And that's why I look to find the fights that have the most likely ending by a finish, by a KO TKO finish. I feel like that's where you're getting the best value right now on a lot of the sports books. I just feel like the money lines it's hard to lay the coin down for that.
It's very hard, especially with all the vig they're making you guys pay these days, right? It can be difficult to turn a profit when you have all those minus odds coming in. And to your point, there's a reason they put the plus next to the underdogs. It's to activate the little dopamine in your brain, because we're associated, right? Plus good, minus bad. So if a temptation starts to build there, you're like, yeah, sure, I'll throw $10 here, $5 on this underdog. If you are going to use that strategy, value hunting, looking for those juicy plays, the plus 200s, the plus 300s, what I would recommend is take your usual unit size and split it up. So if you are value hunting throughout the card, you have 5 to 10 plays instead of maybe 1 unit, 5 units down. That's a lot, especially for the recreational bettor.
Oh yeah.
Instead, maybe put like 0.25 units on each particular play. That way you can have 8 plays, but those 8 plays are only 2 units of your total bankroll. So that, I think, is a very feasible way to do it. Now, of course, the caveat is you still have to be right. Like, if you're wrong, you still got your ass kicked. But if you are chasing those higher plays, higher plus money plays, higher odds plays, where you have that that built-in cushion, you can be wrong about a few of them and still cash. That's how I would do it.
It was an excellent approach for March Madness as well, besides last weekend. But I saw some stat, the public betting the spread for underdogs was crazy. It was like the public went like 24-6. So if that is your approach, if you see a lot of value in a lot of different underdogs, right, I agree. Taking your unit and splitting it up to maybe a third of a unit around there, maybe in half. It's not a bad idea. It all depends on what your bankroll set up to be and what you're even willing to, how many units you're willing to potentially part with per day. Hopefully none.
Yeah, hopefully none, boys. And then just looking at throughout the rest of this, outside the main event, there's nothing else that sticks out to me. Connor Matthews versus Dennis Pazukia. I think that's going to be an absolute banger of a fight. I'm from Massachusetts myself. I like Matthews a lot, but because of that, I feel a bit biased. I can't give you an unbiased take on that fight, so I'm going to, I guess, recuse myself from analysis there. Before we jump into Blanchfield, the Blanchfield fight, is there anything you'd like to get out there?
To be honest, this has been pretty fun. I feel like I've gotten it all out there. I've interjected a couple points when I felt like you were onto something that I was thinking. Yeah, no, I think there's no other fight on here, kind of pretty much to your point there. Too close to call or no value. I really went with not with what I felt was exciting, but again, matchups where there is potential and where I see a high percentage verdict that I found in my film study and everything else.
Okay, so main event, Blanchfield versus the Beast, right? I think this is definitely a title eliminator. Dare I say, whoever wins this could get a title shot sometime in the near future. I love Erin here. I love Erin against Manon. I think she's 100% the side, and the betting market agrees with me. Remember at the beginning, I talked to you about the line movement on Buckley and McKee? I saw Blanchfield hovering around the minus 125, minus 130 range. She's going to
Great
be 2 to
value.
1 by fight day. Yeah, she's going to be 2 to 1 by fight day.
That might be honestly the most startling, surprising value on the entire card, and almost makes me concerned why that line is that incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I love her in this matchup as well. I like her if anything for a submission finish here. She is definitely world class regarding grappling and jujitsu. Yeah, I think she takes her to deep waters, and I see a victory for her tonight. Tomorrow, Saturday. Jesus.
Whenever you watch this, right? So it's
Yeah.
okay. I agree on this hand. I think she's going to have the better grappling, the better jujitsu. And just to put my tinfoil hat on for a sec here, this is in Aaron's backyard. The UFC knows the crowd's going to be behind her. And wouldn't that be a great crowning moment in terms of marketing if she goes out there in front of the home fans, gets the big finish, and calls for the title shot? It would probably make a lot of people very excited, right? You occasionally have to factor that into your handicapping. You have to consider, okay, there's definitely better outcomes in terms of marketing, PR, and the like for the UFC. And do I want to be on the right end of that, or do I want to be on the wrong end? And perhaps if you disagree, maybe just don't be on the opposite end. And what I mean by that, just to give you an example, I was at UFC in Boston, O'Malley versus Sterling, right?
Uh,
Guy
Another
named
great one.
O'Malley fighting in Boston. Let's keep it real. They probably want the young, up and coming guy who they've heavily promoted, given him great matchups throughout his career, almost handpicked to an extent. They're probably going to want him to win that fight. And if you did some reading, you'll saw that Dana kind of negotiated, dare I say, forced Aljo to take that fight on a shorter notice than he would have liked. There was a fairly quick turnaround between the Cejudo fight and that fight. He didn't necessarily get all the time he wanted for his body to recover there, and I do think that played a factor in seeing him get finished, because generally we don't see Aljo get finished in that manner. So just throwing that out there, the UFC has certain things they'd like to happen. So that's just my take. I'm all over Blanchfield here. But to be fair, I should play devil's advocate. If we're wrong about this, it'll be Manon's power. Her strength, she'll be able to defend the takedowns. Right? You got something?
It's got to be. No, if she takes it, it's got to be by points, right? I don't see her submitting Blanchfield. I don't really see that. I don't see it. I don't see Erin putting herself in a position to take too many shots standing. I feel like if she feels like she's in trouble on the feet, she will go to where she's dominant. Um, yeah. Can you be wrong about? Of course, that's why I said the only thing that makes me feel a little suspect is how attractive the line is set for this compared to a couple of the other fights. That they really have, the books have this one practically 50-50, and I couldn't disagree more. Is there a chance for an upset here? Sure. Maybe 10%, 20%. I'm surprised Aaron's not listed as a minus 400 here, minus 450. That's the kind of value I feel like that you're getting on this. If you feel like you want to put your money on here, I feel like it's almost irresistible to put down a unit. It's 1-1 for the better side of the matchup, in my opinion.
Just a quick note on that. The line has moved considerably to this point. Aaron's about minus 190. So
It did move. Okay.
yeah. So she's going to be minus 200 probably on most books right now. By fight day, she'll be higher. I was going to say, bro, you had me excited. You had my degenerate tendencies going. I was going to say somewhere out there, there's a sports book hanging fucking minus 110 on Blanchfield. I was getting in the car and I was driving, bro.
No, I must have misheard you. Maybe that's what she was originally listed at.
Yep, she opened it around minus 130,
That's
and then she's been steamed all week to minus 190.
back to the one point I mentioned earlier, where I just feel like we're very early in how they make the odds for a lot of these fights. I feel like a lot of the odds are inflated on the favorite side, But with that being said, some of these cards, it's 80%, 90% favorites winning. Back to what I mentioned last week on my little long shot that I threw in for a third of a unit. 6 out of 9 win, and the only 3 losses are underdogs. So it's how do you lean? How do you not lean with favorites when you see them winning that often? But yeah, I still feel like it might be worth the early week bet. What's the saying that they say? If you like a favorite, go early. If you like an underdog, go late. This might be one of those cases because I think, yeah, you said she's minus 190 now. By Friday night, Saturday morning, maybe she might go up to minus 280, minus 300 at this rate, depending how the weigh-in goes.
I don't think it'll move to that extent. That would be like some James Krause type shit right there. If a line moves from minus 200 to minus 380, there's some shenanigans going on. But
I wouldn't be surprised to see people really hammering the line heavily on that. I don't know.
Really?
I feel like a lot of people, from what I mentioned earlier, since they don't put the props odds out, I want to say until like 8 p.m. Friday, something like that, and then people wait to execute on their early bets. But I could be wrong. I'm interested to actually see Friday, Saturday, what she gets moved to. Tons of value there still, though, at minus 190.
All right, and we'll have to see. So that wraps it up for me. We're in agreement there on the main event. We went through the bets we like, the sides we like on the fight card. We gave our analysis, and noticeably, I'm just going to wrap up on this point. We didn't break down every fight. It's extremely difficult for you, the average person, and even the sharp, to have a good play on that, on every single fight, on every single card. You identify your spots, and you snipe them, right? Because if you're betting 13, 12, even more than that, bets on a card, you're extremely, extremely behind the 8 ball in terms of how you have to perform in order to make money there. So if you enjoyed this show, leave us a like, leave us a comment, make sure you subscribe. Right? Any feedback you have for us, we'd be happy to hear it. I'm huge into MMA. Having Randy on the show here, I think is a great, great addition. So I'm hoping to make more content like this. Let us know what you want if you care. If you don't, and you're going to say mean things, at least make them very creative, right? I grew up during the Xbox Live era of 2009 Modern Warfare 2. So
There we go,
like,
baby.
yeah, so like to go fuck yourself, it doesn't apply, right? You got to really break out the vocabulary to get something out of me. All right, boys, we appreciate your support. Keep that in mind. Randy, you have any closing words?
Just thank you so much for having me on, invite me on as a guest. I appreciate it. It's been incredibly fun. Hope to do it again, and let's watch the line movement. I look forward to next time.
All right, boys, that's it. Good luck on anything you have. Tailing, fading. Let's make some money. Peace.